let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, fetism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming to the show for the first time. Today we've got Josh.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you both today?
Burning the candle at both ends, but I'm doing okay.
Well, yes, Tim's flagging a little bit today, so if you hear just some sort of unconscionable twitching and just generic
I'm a little
screams,
loopy.
you know,
it's not my fault.
It's just the trauma coming forth from him. You know, we're bleeding him like a leech. Just
well, if there's something I love more than anything else, I love trauma. So bring it. Let's deal with it. So.
Fabulous. Well, listen, I don't know if you've been able to pick up from the iconic voice yet, but this just isn't any Josh. This is the one and only Josh of Sidekick Productions. Oh my god, this is exciting because, I mean, I think Skeleton Crew is, in my opinion, famous within the community for representing gaming on a platform that I haven't seen people do before, and in all honesty, I haven't seen people do since. So, hi, hello, welcome. This is really exciting.
Well, I'm so excited to be here and talk about the show and talk about what you both are doing as well to help the community and everything. So it's really an awesome opportunity for some, as we say in the biz, synergy.
Ooh, synergy. I like that. I mean, we've been talking to some people recently, and I do feel, and look, I know we've said this before, there are like themes that come out in our seasons. We don't plan for this. It's just like this overarching narrative. Clearly, it's the vibe of the gaining and fetus communities for the year. But I feel like that kind of community, what you say, synergy, I feel like that's certainly coming to the fore. And there's a lot of creators and just people wanting to connect, and I love that. So listen, let's get into it. Let's get things started. So for anyone who has not heard of Sidekick Productions TM, can you explain to listeners what is Sidekick Productions?
Sure. Sidekick Productions is a queer, fat-positive, sex-positive production company focusing on television and film. When I first started it many years ago, not to date myself or anything, but back in 2010, which is forever and a day ago now, apparently, I was focused on theater, and because I grew up in the world of theater, I love theater. That was my area of knowledge and expertise, and I got very tired, I guess, of putting all the work into theater that and then being in New York City, no one tends to everyone has somebody who's an actor in their friend group, and so every day of the week someone has 4 shows they have to choose between to go and see. So when you put up a show, you get 3 or 4 performances and maybe 10 people in the audience if you're lucky, because you're not doing a Broadway show at my level, you're doing an off Broadway show, or sometimes an off in Queens show. So it's a wonderful experience to do live theater, but I was getting a little burnt out on it, and so I shifted into I wrote a play called The Skeleton Crew, and this was the first thing I had written that I realized I didn't quite tie up as neatly at the end as I usually did, and I could see this more as a pilot of a series following these 6 characters than anything I had written before. So I dropped the and I shifted into Skeleton Crew, and we decided to make it as a 12-episode TV series. We had never done anything like that before. We had never done any film or anything. So the first season presents itself very theatrically. And anyone who watches the first season, there's a lot of technical things as we learn, and we did a lot of learning on the job. And one of the things that one of my co-stars likes to say about the show is you can watch us grow as filmmakers by watching season 1 to season 5 and see what we have done from the beginning to where we are now, and how we've gotten new equipment, how we've learned new techniques, how we've figured out lighting and sound and score and all those things that go into making film and television, and voila, that we are where we are at where we are now. So that's kind of exciting. But long story short, Sidekick Productions is a queer, fat positive, sex positive production company, and we focus on telling these stories with actors of from this world.
I mean, I love that. I think I'd heard of Skeleton Crew before I saw it, and I knew that a lot of people talked about it. And, I like that you mentioned, like, season one, if people are talking production quality, a bit lower, that's okay. We all start somewhere. It's season one of this podcast, for goodness sake. Crunch to crunch, girl. And, even where we are at this very second, I pray by the time we're at season 7, season 8, we're going to look back on season 3 and be like, girl, that. But that is the nature of growth. Your art, it shifts and changes. And you know what? It's very easy for someone to turn around and be like, I think this is, blibbity blibbity blah, and I have negative opinions. Like, that's fantastic. If you're not going to help make it better, you can shove that up your ass, because I'm out here trying to create, so get, basically. But I love hearing that journey, that growth, and I love that you mentioned as well that impetus. It starts in theater, and you move to what you're doing now with film production. And I think this is a great note for anyone who does any kind of performance art. For the most part in theater, unless you write, your only ability to partake in your art is to audition and be deemed good enough to partake in your art, or you've got to put your own money towards things, and you've got to really hope that someone's going to back you. Whereas with film production, with media, with a lot of this online transition, it's kind of up to you. You can put as many hours in honing your thing, making it better and better and better, and you will probably find people who are on board in the crunch eras that will walk with you into the golden years. So I think that's a good note for people, right? Like, if you're a performance-based person and you feel this, I don't know, desire to create, this desire to do more, consider these types of mediums, because I think there is actually a lot of real longevity to it. And as you say, you made the production 13 years ago now?
Sidekick Productions started in 2010. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that you've told us a bit about how that came to be, but like, how does the Skeleton Crew, the series that, the community knows you for, how does that differ from the original piece, or rather, how did it evolve out of the original piece?
From the original play that I wrote for this. So the first episode of Skeleton Crew season 1, the pilot, or bone collecting, if you will. We had a lot of bone themes in the first 2 episodes, 2 years of episode titles. So the first episode is the play, but the play was about 90 minutes, and I crunched that down into 36. So there's a lot of things that are left out. There's a lot of things that are dropped to the wayside, because it wasn't necessary for what I was going to do with a series, and it was necessary for a play, but not necessary for the series. So because with a series, I have time to tell lots of backstory over the course of 12 episodes. In a play, you have to do it all in 90 minutes and then leave it on the stage, as actually, yeah, as they say. So that's the biggest change, I think, with that. Also, I think some of the characters are, and people might disagree, because I've heard feedback that some of the characters are very unlikable, but I think in the play, the characters are even more unlikable in the play. Because they're all very difficult people in the play, and we softened them a little bit. I also once I knew that I was playing a character, I consciously changed some of the aspects of Anthony's sexuality. Anthony, for anyone who knows, is seemingly has a companion in the form of Carla in season 1, which is a doll. And early Carla was a sexual relationship with a woman that was a former patient he had dug up and had kept as a corpse. So it was a corpse he had turned into a doll. That was not going to work in a series because it just, I mean, I guess it could have, but it would have been a little bit much to ask, considering the things we've asked of an audience to watch for our show as to begin with. So I softened that a little bit. I also knew that I am not someone who when I am wearing a beard, which I haven't for a lot of this year actually, since last year actually, and I'm sure I'll talk about that later because of why I shaved and everything. But when I'm wearing a beard and I get called into a casting for a role or something, people expect me to behave in a certain manner. And when I don't have that sort of inherent truck driver masculinity that comes out of me, then they think, oh well, he doesn't match what his appearance looks like, which I think is great, and I think that's important, but it doesn't work for a mainstream audience typically. So, but I'm not someone who I wanted to present a fully homosexual character, not a character who was bisexual, because I don't have that lived in experience. And given that there were so many new things I was trying with this, I thought let's make some of the hats that I'm wearing a little bit more relatable. So
I can appreciate that. And, Tim, I want to bring you into the conversation here because you've said to me how many times about enjoying media where the characters aren't that likable. Like I do struggle with that when characters aren't likable.
I've tried to introduce James to various films and TV shows where pretty much everybody acts like an asshole. And I've grew up watching, growing up in the 90s, that's all that was on television was everybody acting like an asshole. So for me, it's nothing new. It's like, and he's like, he'd be, how could you watch this? Everyone's just such a jerk and like nobody's happy. And I'm like, this is real life, sweetie. Like, that these people, you've been around these people before.
That's very true. And that's probably why I choose the kind of films that I do, because I'm like, yeah, I'm escaping reality to not be around those people. I'm not escaping to like bring them back in. I'm escaping to get away from. But personal preferences notwithstanding, I'd love to hear about that kind of journey, from one thing into the other. And of course, the dark humor in me, you talk about, we couldn't have had a dead character portrayed. And I'm like, yeah, she'd be falling apart at the seams, you could say. But again, I love that. And I love the intention to soften characters and try to convey themes with that authenticity rather than just to say, oh, I had this idea. Let's put somebody, because they said they'll do it, throw it at the wall and hope that it sticks, and I think maybe that's from the feedback I've seen of Skeleton Crew, I feel like that's what people connect with, is that there is that underlying layer of authenticity, and to bring it around here, I know you mentioned Sidekick Productions is more specifically, fat and queer positive. I mean, I think that's one of the number one things I realized in Skeleton Crew as I was watching through it. There are thin people sometimes, but actually the vast majority of people are fat, queer, diverse in color, and all sorts of different things. And I was curious to know, like, when it comes to, the way you write and the way you cast, yes, Sidekick Productions does this, but when you write and when you cast, is there a specific intention with that?
Whenever I write, I automatically assume that the character is queer and fat. That's just sort of the way that I approach what I write. Anytime I'm writing something, and in fact, anytime I'm reading something as well, if it's not explicitly stated, that's usually what I generate in my head with the image. For me, a lot of what Sidekick Productions is creating a world that I want to see reflected from in the world that we live in. Obviously, everyone doesn't need to be fat. Everyone doesn't need to be queer. And everyone isn't fat and everyone isn't queer, but it's probably as accurate to say that the worlds that you see in Skeleton Crew and the other things that we make, minus some of the wackiness, are realistic. I mean, most of us probably who are listening to this probably have friend groups which are primarily dominated by fat and queer people. So that's the world that we know. I mean, if you think about a show like Queer as Folk, which both the US and the UK version, when they came out years ago, they were criticized for not reflecting all of queer culture, but all of queer culture can't be reflected in one TV show. It's impossible. And the world of Queer as Folk is very much something that is a real world for that group of we all know that group of people. There is that group of people in the community. For us, we have the bear and the chub community, the who that's who we tend to hang out with. I know when I go on vacation with friends, those are who I'm going on vacation with, are generally bear and chub people, because those are who I'm my main friend groups. And yeah, you got a chaser who's there with us, who might not be a fat person, but they are appreciative of fat people. So when I'm writing, when I'm creating, I automatically assume that everyone is queer, and everyone is fat. And when it comes to casting, I generally try to find people who will fit those roles. Sometimes you can't unfortunately, you can't find fat actors who are comfortable with doing what we do in Sidekick Productions. I actually cast something last year in June that I had a fat actor who was queer who said that they could not do what we the movie that we were doing because they just weren't comfortable with their body being treated in a sexually positive way. And I get that. It's unfortunate. It's very sad, but it took me a very long time to be comfortable with my own body. Even I put myself in situations as Skeleton Crew and early on that I was not comfortable with as Josh, but I knew that if I was going to try to make a show that was presenting positive portrayals of fat sexuality, then I had to walk the truth that I was trying to present. So but it's hard. It takes you a very long time because we grow up as performers who are fat. We're told that we can play the grandmothers or the grandfathers or the dads or the silly best friend, but never the romantic love interest, never the lead. And when you do have that, it's usually becomes the whole point of the show. Like Hairspray. I think Hairspray, there's a lot of great things about Hairspray, but we're never able to forget the fact that Tracy Turnblad is fat because they talk about it nonstop in the show. And yes, that's something that is, it's great to have a plus size or a fat actress doing a role and having a lead role. But when I try to create a show, I try to create a show with fat characters who don't necessarily spend the whole time thinking about, oh, I'm fat. It's just, that's who they are. That's their bodies. And I make it fat positive in the sense that we don't spend a lot of time sitting there going, I'm fat, or boohoo, I'm fat, or I need to lose weight. And very few, if any, storylines ever touch upon weight, or topics touch upon weight. And if we do anything where it's sort of treated in a derogatory way, it's clearly by a villain character, or it's one of those, it's a sassy thing, that the kind of thing we would say to friends, like, oh, shut your fat mouth, you tubby bitch, or something like that. So
there's so much there that I love and I really want to unpack, but I think the first port of call, and I've mentioned this podcast before, but you mentioned Tracy Turnblad, of course it comes to mind, More Than Tracy Turnblad, which is a podcast focusing about plus size representation in theatre and media. So listeners, if you want to learn more about that, go and check that out. But you're absolutely right. There's something to be said, like, it's a show where they talk about it all the time, and they don't just talk about it because they wanted that to be the theme of the show. They do that because it's actually a reflection of how society functions. Tracy is insanely talented. She's a great singer, a great dancer. She's this performer type, a burgeoning star, but they cannot help but make the entire conversation around the fact that she's a fat whale and she's a goddamn communist loving black people, and like that's his whole plot line, right? So I think that's kind of the whole point, like that there's so much more to the fat experience than just I am fat. I love that with Skeleton Crew and what we've seen so far of the Demon series, fat is happenstance. It's happenstance, and it doesn't need to be talked about as, well, we are fat, because that's the context. You're here. You already know that. We don't need to talk about that lived experience or how certain characters, maneuver through the door or twist down a hallway or bend over to put their clothes on. It's just presentational because this is how it is to be fat. This is what that looks like. And I think that's really, really quite wonderful.
I noticed that specifically in the Skeleton Crew show that there was a particular relationship that was very obviously, like, not even trying to conceal that it was a gainer-feeder relationship. And like, I was really surprised when I saw, I was like, oh my God, somebody's actually writing that into a show. because I never thought I would see that. So like, was that intentional from the start? Like, did you, when you were writing it, were like, I'm gonna have a gainer feeder relationship, or did it just sort of evolve as you were writing it?
So when I a lot of my early plays and everything, I this is where some of the sex positive aspects of psychic production comes in. I really love to explore and celebrate sexual fetishes. Even if they're sexual fetishes I don't have, I just love to explore them and share them with the mainstream audience, because I think that it is a wonderful chance to and I hate the word normalize, but normalize, or at least introduce real worlds to an audience without judging them or without making them seem something that's shocking, or I work, and I hope I succeed. But I work very hard at trying to present these worlds of fetishes and uh outside sexualities in ways that are presented without judgment, and just in terms of, just like presenting a fat character as a fat character without drawing attention to their weight. I try to present these sexualities and fetishes as real things that people have without sitting there and drawing attention to them. And trying to be shocking with them. So I hope I succeed. I think that sometimes I think that I do most of the time, and and I would love to ever hear from people from the communities that I present if we don't, because I think it's important for me to learn as well as a creator how we're doing that. So that's a little bit of a backstory about where, yes, when it came to Hunter's character, I wanted Hunter to be an encourager and a feeder. Yes, that was an important part of what I wanted from that role. And then just naturally any character that he entered relationships with would become a gainer because of that. So that was something that was there it wasn't there in it wasn't there in the play, but when we evolved into the series, it evolved into that. Yes. The master slave dynamic of Hunter and Aaron was there in the play, but I don't not necessarily the gaming aspect of it. But when I had the chance to present, but part of that's because when I write a play, I try to be very practical about what I can present on stage, and it's that's one of those things that you can't really present as well on stage, because it would have just been either messy or not clearly defined for an audience, I think. But again, with a series, you have time to develop a little bit more, and you get to have a chance to show things and all. So Hunter is always meant to be, once we started the series, meant to be an encourager and a feeder, and the characters that he ends up with are meant to be in a gating relationship. And in the case of Anthony, the character that I play, it was one that he wasn't even aware he was a part of, until he realized it about halfway through the season one. And then it took him a long time to sort of accept what Hunter was looking for from him, and allow it to be something that entered their marriage. So.
I mean, I thought it was really well presented. I mean, clearly not just from the perspective of like, I got to see it, end of story, but because you yourself identify as a gainer, correct? To some extent?
Yeah, that's a world that I have. When I was trying to come to terms with my body and everything, that was probably the world that was most embracing to me when I was early on in the early days of the internet, because now I will date myself with sites like Beefy Frat and all that, but I don't, does that even say, I don't think that site even exists anymore, does it?
It came back actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if my account still exists.
Beefy Frat is Beefy back. I think if you reach out to the creator, I know that at some stage there was something to do with porting profiles. So
yeah, they can do that. You just enter in your old username, and he can get all your old stuff back over.
That would require me to remember my old username, but that's
the thing, is most of us don't remember what name we were using.
But so for me, the world of gaming is something that I definitely identify with, and I whether it's an active participant in it or not, I mean it's that's at different points in my life and everything. So that's something that I constantly go back and forth on and all. And part of that's just because of the whole I don't really have I don't have a lot of time for things outside of Sidekick Productions.
She's busy. She's booked and blessed.
It is. I mean, booked and blessed with a day job that takes me about 50 hours a week, and then a Sidekick Productions job, which takes me about 60 hours a week. So between that, it's sort of like I can sleep a little bit. So when we talk about trauma and burning the candles at both ends, I get that completely, Tim. So
Well, listen, I think it's wonderful to hear that, and I think it's good for listeners to hear because, when we drop the socials at the end, you all will get to see Josh. Josh is delightfully shaped, everybody. But, there is something to be said. When we talk about gaining, we often talk about this linear journey, but for anyone who's actually ever gained, ever at all, it's fucking never linear. Like, you don't just get to go from 1 pound all the way up. That's not how that works. You will gain and lose, and for no apparent reason. Your body will make different decisions. And then, of course, you can just decide to take a break, or decide it's not for you right now, or change your mind and go back, and then change your mind again and go for. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, loving your body and being on a journey with your body. And I think that's what we're hearing a lot of today. You've been on a journey with your body, and representation isn't always just about I'm here and I'm happy and that's the end of it. Like, sometimes it is a little bit of fake it till you make it, because there's no other choice but to keep moving forward. And what I wanted to bring up when you talked about, your stance on how you see yourself within the gaming community, I think it's just very clear from those dynamics that someone who is informed and knowledgeable wrote those. Though I feel like I need to ask a question just to put it out there and actually have that answer once and for all for anyone who wants to know this officially. The actors who portray Hunter and Aaron, are they actually gainers or are they just actors?
as far as I'm always understanding, all of the actors involved are actors. So this is what the skeleton crew and all the shows that we do are acting, and we are portraying actors, so portraying roles as actors. So they like any of the characters and whatnot and so forth, they may be doing things that I don't know about. We don't really discuss that. That's because we do try very hard to keep it a professional set. I'm very, very conscious of the fact that we have a very sexualized production. For all of our shows are sexual, because again, being a queer, sex positive series, there is an element of heightened sexuality on this and there. And if you've ever been around a group of queer men, then you know how they tend to behave. So I work extra hard to make sure that what we do on set is presented very professionally. I have done research in intimacy coordination and all that. I'm going to be taking classes at some point when they're available. They sell out very quickly, but there's online classes for intimacy coordinators that I would like to pursue to provide some actors with professional protection, I guess is the right word we'll go with. And then also, for some of you who don't know this, some of our actors are straight and identify as straight, and they've found it to be an interesting experience to be brought onto the show and become sex symbols in a way for some of our for some of our fans. And then of course, being presented with things that they didn't expect in their DMs from our fans, which is something that our fans might need to learn better about. But that's another story.
Well, that's really where that question came from, because obviously, like, when I watched the series, as I'm sure all of those fans felt when they watched the series, they went, "Oh, this is really enjoyable to watch," and I shan't lie to you, did enjoy, for those obvious reasons, to watch said scenes. But we've had this conversation before, like the child actor who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly a fabulous actor to play such an unlikable cunt of a human being. Of course, fabulous actor. But it's the fact that real world human beings sent him death threats and tried to dox him, and didn't someone try to like run him over in the street or something?
I
And it's
think
like,
so.
people, this is really not okay. We must have a real problem with delineating fantasy and reality. For goodness sake, that was like episode 4 of the podcast, I think, somewhere way back when, near the beginning of the back catalogue. Listeners, go and have a look, for God's sake. But let's circle there for a moment. Do you find that the fans, when it comes to that part of the content, tend to be more on the respectful side of the engagements? Or can it lean, in your experience and observation, into, shall we say, professionally questionable?
I think that I think it's by no means as extreme as the things that like the actor from Jack Gleason, I think is his name, and or even the queens on RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean they all get some terrible treatments from audiences.
Oh, yeah.
We're presenting something that people find appealing, either in an aesthetic way or in a sexually pleasing way. So our fans are not really people who reach out with death threats or anything, thankfully, but they do reach out in ways that are probably a little inappropriate. I mean, there are fans who reach out sending penis pictures, and there are fans who reach out who are we've had fans who've reached out and said, why don't you come and marry me, and I will treat you like a prince. And while that does sound appealing, that's I mean, and then there are just fans who are like, thank you so much for putting this on screen and letting myself be seen. And
Yeah.
so the fans run the gamut. I mean, there are fans who are very respectful and appreciative of what we have. There are fans who are too appreciative of what we have, and then there are fans who are maybe be a little demanding about where's my next content, and that's like, well, maybe join the Patreon and we can get a little bit more money to make that happen. But
Do you
Hello?
think that you guys are maybe a little bit safer because you kind of skirt that line of camp and kitsch in what you do, and maybe that's just more forgiving?
I think so in some ways, yes. Also, I mean, we are limited by YouTube standards because most of our stuff is on YouTube. So I'm not going to put anything on there that's not. We do have something that's coming out down the road. Actually, that's our first feature film that will be much more much much more graphic in terms of nudity and things, but it's because it's not going to be on YouTube, but as far as what we do, yes, it's Skeleton Crew. I am a very I write that camp and kitsch genre. I mean, whether it's horror or comedy or whatever it is, camp is always an element of it, and so I think that's also, I think, what some people just find turn them off about the show, is people who don't like camp will not appreciate what we are doing, or but that you're not going to please everybody, so
Yeah.
it's there.
Although, how can you dislike camp? I mean, come on.
I agree with you there. I mean, that's just inherent in me that it comes out. But as far as our fans, I mean, we have wonderful fans who are so supportive. I do know that some of them have that some of the actors have been made uncomfortable by the fan reactions.
Mm.
And that's unfortunate. And I've done a better job now of preparing new actors for potential when it comes to
Feedback.
what I know, for potential feedback when it comes to what I know their role is going to be. Now if it's a role that it's a role that's not going to be inherently sexualized, I rarely talk with an actor about it, but if it's something that I think could be a risk, then I do prepare them, and that's also one of the reasons why I do try to gravitate towards casting queer actors, because I think queer actors understand where the audience is coming from maybe a little bit differently than straight actors do.
Mm.
Um, whether or not they whether again, not that it's appropriate, but they understand someone who is from maybe a more restrictive area of the world, and why they might not understand the that it's not appropriate to send a penis
Types
picture
of
in your
photos
DM.
and text
Um,
messages.
so yeah. So, because I think we understand that a little bit. I mean, growing up in the United States, especially now, um, there's a lot going on in this country, and we there has always been a lot going on in this country, and it seems like every two steps forward, one step back, kind of thing.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think anybody who grew up queer in the United States, especially around my age range, we understand, and we appreciate the things people go through and why they might be doing what they do, whether or not it's acceptable or right. And most of the time, the actors, when are confronted with this, they try to they try to be as gracious as possible, but they also it's harder, I think, for the straight actors than it is for the queer ones. So.
But I want to circle back for a second because you mentioned, yeah, there are some fans, bit much, but there are also some fans who give you guys great love, great support, great feedback. And I actually want to ask, what has the reception been like in terms of, as we've mentioned, that gaining representation, plus size representation? What has that feedback been like from viewers?
Well, the portrayal of fat characters in love on screen has been very, very positive. I've had actors, I've had audience members tell me that they found someone that they became comfortable with loving who they love because of our shows. They are comfortable with their own bodies because of our shows. They understood who they are because of our shows, and that's incredibly wonderful. And if I don't accomplish anything else in this world, that is something huge right there that I never expected it to be the case. When I first made this show, I was like, I only get 30 people watching my plays. I'd be grateful if like 100 people watch this show. And now we've got millions of views on YouTube for the whole show and everything. And I'm so grateful for all of that. And I'm so grateful for the people who are able to find themselves in the work that we do. Oddly enough, I don't really hear much from the community as far as the gaming aspect of it. People don't reach out to me about it. I never really hear people talking about it. I didn't really think that people even noticed it from the community as much because I don't see like there's websites like Belly Builders which will post like photos like media sightings and everything like that. I never once see anything from any of our shows posted there. So I'm like, I guess the community doesn't really notice what we're doing, and that's okay. But I'm thrilled to hear that you both have seen the show and heard of it and everything, because that means that we are reaching an audience that is there. Because I one of the reasons I included this is because I wanted to have something for this community to see themselves in as well, because this community doesn't see itself presented anywhere. And again, not in a way that is judgmental, not in a way that's shocking, just in a way that's real. And that's why I put it in there. But so to hear that at least the two of you have noticed it and have enjoyed it in the show makes me very grateful for that, because I don't see people post or talk about it at all from that angle, at least. I really do. This might sound braggadocious, but I really do think no one is doing what we are doing, and no one is even thinking of doing what we are doing. And that's where it can sometimes be frustrating, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of fat activists on TikTok, for example, who talk about all the things that are going wrong. No one ever talks about what's going right, and people who are doing things that are right. And it's very easy to sit there and criticize things, but why not promote people who are doing the things that are, and again, not just me, there are other people out there that are doing these things. There's a wonderful collection of short stories, of horror short stories, that's a collection of fat positive horror short stories called Diet Riot. And it's a really, it's explicitly called Diet Riot, a fat positive horror anthology. So it's right there in the title. So there are people out there who are making fat positive content, but it's so much easier for these podcasts and these TikTokers to sit there and dwell on all the negativity, and dwell on all the things that are wrong, and focus on Mitchell and Cam from Modern Family instead of focusing on Hunter and Anthony from Skeleton Crew. And it would be nice to see the fat activists, the people who are looking for fat positivity and promoting it, to actually promote people who are doing it, because there's a lot of people out there who are doing it. And we just happen to be the only one, I think, who's doing it the way we're doing it. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have people who alongside me who are making this stuff with me and are going along for the ride, because it is putting themselves out there in some way. And some of our people are not actors at all. They're just people who I knew, who I said, hey, I want you to be in this show because I think that it's important to have people who look like you and act like you in this production. And you're right, we have Demon Doctor, which is where many of our actors from Skeleton Crew are playing very different characters. There's also The Art of Blowing It, where again, many of the actors from Skeleton Crew are playing very, very different characters. So there's a lot of stuff to see the range that some of these people can do, and they're so talented and they're so great. And I mean, in Skeleton Crew, we have our musical episode with 15 original songs, where you can see the musical talents of everyone from the series.
So I want to pivot now to talk a little bit more. You mentioned earlier a rough 50 hours a week working and 60 hours a week doing everything else. I'm curious, how do you, and this might not be the question to ask, how do you find a work-life balance? I need to know, because I don't have one.
This is going to probably sound pathetic or weird or bizarre, but my life is Sidekick Productions. So for me, that is my work-life balance right there. I am I'm very fortunate that I have a relationship with someone who supports and understands that Sidekick Productions is something that I am trying to do for me, for him, for the community at large. No pun intended there. But so he supports me, and he's there to do a lot of the things that I maybe don't have the energy or the time to focus on. My friends are very supportive of me in terms of reminding me to do things like drink a glass of water, because I don't do that. So I have a work-life balance because I've created a community of people around me who support my vision and also support my health. So I am very, very fortunate about that. It is something that I am so grateful for. And when I say that Sidekick Productions is a family, it really is. We have, and even the audience. I mean, we have people on our Discord, which is for our Patreon members, who I talk to almost every day. It's just a really great community that we're building from within the performers and the crew. I will make time for important things, like one of my best friends just had a play happen in Queens, and I made sure that I went out and I saw the performances because that was important to me to see those. For birthdays, I'll be there. For birthdays, for important events, I'll be there. I do try to make it once a week. Some of my friends and I have a movie to almost every week, so on Wednesday, so that way I am there, and I make a very important effort to schedule my work-life balance. But I want to make sure that it's that I'm there and present and grateful and show who matters to me, because but so also my love language is art, which I guess is a weird thing to say. When I like my casting someone from my friend group in a show is my way of saying I love you, and I care about you, and I want you to be a part of my life and my world. And so that's one of the ways that I do that. My day job, I have gotten to the point after 18 years of working there that I'm able to have a very structured day, where I start the day at 6 a.m. and I end the day at 3 p.m. and I go home. And for the most part, I don't have to do too much outside of work. There are things that I do outside of home that when I do those things outside of work for at home, they are things that are connected to my Sidekick world. I do a lot of video editing for my day job. I do a lot of creating content for them, and that is something that I can squeeze into Sidekick Productions life because it's something that is easy and simple for me to do. But it also means I sacrifice a lot too, to make this happen. Like just casual hangs are not things I do very much, because it's if I don't schedule the next 2 weeks of filming, then no one else is. So I do get some flack from some people in my life who are like, why you were working too much, but if I don't do it, no one else is going to. So that's the way it is. And I have people call me out too at times, and they're like, hey, just stop it for a second. And I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that, and I need that. ultimately, the way that I achieve work-life balance, this is a very long treatise on what I think is a simple answer. The way I achieve work-life balance is by having a community of people in my life who support me and ensure that that happens.
I want to ask just quickly here because you mentioned it before. You shaved recently, and you said that there was something behind that.
So a couple things for that. One I think coming out of the pandemic, wearing a mask every day is because I still wear a mask at work. Most partially because riding the subway in New York City, it's just New York, I think, is one of the places in the world that where there's still a lot of people wearing masks. I don't know about London, I don't know about other places, but here in New York, you can see about half the people still wearing masks on things like the subway and all that. So it's just it became very aesthetically unappealing with all of the the acne that would come up and everything from all the places where the beard and the mask would constantly rub and everything. So part of it was just gravitated towards that, which maybe that was TMI, so I apologize everyone for that. But that was just one thing. But no, last June we filmed our first feature film, and it's called A Taste of Youth. And one of the things that I wanted to do in it is I wanted to make sure that I looked a little bit younger than my co-star. My co-star is supposed to be playing a 46-year-old. I'm supposed to be playing a 35-year-old. Now, again, I'm not 35 is not outside of my range at all. But I wanted to enhance the age difference in terms of physical appearance. So my partner and my co-star had a dark beard, and I said, okay, let's shave my face and everything. I tend to look a lot younger when I'm shaved. I have an baby face of a sorts. And then after I did that, I just sort of realized that I sort of it's been a long time since I've been clean shaven on a regular basis, and I kind of liked it. Part of it is aesthetically. I like how my face looks this way. I think that it is um I enjoy the roundness of the face that I have, that I think my beard might cover up somewhat. And so that's something that I decided to keep. But the real reason for it was the feature film that we made, which is A Taste of Youth, and that is the world's first, or I think the world's first queer, fat positive, sex positive horror feature film coming out soon. So there's a lot of queer films that are being made that are horror. There's a lot of queer horror coming out, but I think we are the world's first queer, fat positive, sex positive feature film.
So, A Taste of Youth, are there any references to something like maybe Death Becomes Her in that? Or
I think a lot of people can see elements of that in there, for sure. It is definitely about a man who turns 46, who isn't grateful of the fact that he's aging, and the opportunities he's presented when he finds out that he can maybe turn back time a little bit. So
Honestly, I would be very keen to check that out. And I did also want to ask, as we begin to come to the end of the episode, are there any productions that you want to promote? So this is the moment. Give us what's already out there. What are you working on? What's coming down the pipeline? Give us the catalog.
well, we have, if you've never seen Skeleton Crew, you have about 40 hours of television ahead of you because we have seasons 1 through 5 of Skeleton Crew available at skeletoncrewtheseries.com. And that is our flagship series, which features, for listeners of this, who might be most interested, that features a lot of our gaining and feeding relationships. In fact, the central couple is a gaining and feeding couple. So that is something I think that would definitely delight the audience who is listening to this right now. If you are interested a little bit more in 90s genre fiction like Buffy and The X-Files, then you will probably really appreciate our series Demon Doctor, which is a queer, fat positive horror comedy series available at demondoctor.com. And season 1 is fully available. Season 2 is currently being released monthly. So you have this is the year of Demon Doctor, hashtag human Demon Doctor, where you can see a new episode of Demon Doctor every month at the beginning of the month from January to December. So this is a huge, exciting season, and I can't wait for everyone to see it. And And then we've got our mockumentary series created by one of our. This is the first series we produced that was created by another member of the Crewniverse. And she created it. Ashley Monique Menard, she created it, and it is called The Art of Blowing It at theartofblowingittheseries.com. It is about a former child star who is trying to reclaim her fame and glory, and just messing up everything along the way. And that is a really hilarious series. She's currently writing season 2 of that, so that will hopefully come out soon. We have 2 short films which are available on our website, youtube.com/Sidekick Productions. Wasted on the Young and Scratched, both are award-winning films that have been in a lot of festivals, so that's exciting. I am about to start production on a new series that is going to probably come out next year, and that is called The Brooklyn Butcher. So I'm very excited for that. It is a queer fat positive horror series, and that is basically imagine 9 episodes of The Twilight Zone happening at the same time in an apartment building, and they all connect in sort of a larger narrative. So that is sort of the premise of The Brooklyn Butcher. So, and then, of course, our big project, which we're very excited for, is A Taste of Youth, and that is wrapping up right now in terms of post-production. We're hopefully going to have that ready for festivals by the end of the summer, and then we'll be able to hopefully be able to stream it sometime early next year for people on whatever website will host us. I'm really, fingers crossed, we'll be on Shudder or something like that, but we'll see. That's the dream and all. And for anyone who loves musical theater, we do have our full-length musical episode of Skeleton Crew, and that is called Dueling Pianos, a Skeleton Crew musical. You can follow us. You can find us on Spotify to get both the original cast soundtrack, cast recording, or the recording of the album by my co-writer of the musical, Nakia, who is from season 1 of The Voice. So if you're a big fan of his, which you should be, and if you're not, you should go listen to him. He has a whole album of our songs where he's singing them. And you can find Dueling Pianos to watch it on our website, on skeletoncriewtheseries.com. That's broken up into 4 episodes if you want to. And then, of course, you can support us at patreon.com/Sidekick Productions, where you can join us and see all the behind-the-scenes things that we do. I post weekly videos of behind-the-scenes content, deleted scenes, interviews, things like that. You can see some of the things we do in our downtime, which proves that I do have a little bit of downtime. So there we go. And you can also join our Discord, which is for members of the Patreon only, but it's a chance to connect with some of the Crewniverse actors and just chat with us and share and have a good time. And I think it's a really great community that we're developing there. It's small but intimate, and I hope that you will come and join us there. And I think that's all we're doing right now. So, but all in all, if you come and watch us on Sidekick Productions on YouTube, you will have about probably, I think we have 54 point something hours of television for you to enjoy right now. And that's a lot of things to do during the summer when you are probably not looking to go out in the heat. So there you go.
Tim, if you think that's a lot, I never want to hear you whinge again about my plans for the podcast, about all the millions of things I want to do, because this is
I'm not whinging. I'm not whinging.
Doing it. My God, everybody, go goddamn now. Do not walk. You must waddle, because we don't run around here because we're fat. Waddle to YouTube and watch all of this beautiful stuff, to Spotify, and just check them out. Give them your patronage, your money, your support, all that good shit. Oh my goodness, and I'm excited to invest myself into more of Sidekick Productions. But I have one final question for you, Josh. What do you want listeners to take away from today?
I think that what I want everyone to realize is that we can only make the change we want to see in the world. And so if we want to see these things represented in media, we have to do it ourselves, because no one else is going to. No one, and when they try to, and when they're applauded for it, like, again, not to criticize so much Modern Family, but with Modern Family, you've got essentially a chub chaser couple with zero sexuality between them. And it's not because they're asexual characters, which is something very different, and I think should be represented more, and actually is represented in Sidekick Productions as well. That's another story. But they're presented with just as almost as eunuchs. They're in a married relationship. They clearly have a sexuality because they clearly express it at times, but they never get to act on it. Whereas you get to see other characters in that same series in bed, having intercourse, kissing their spouses, and so on and so forth. That is highly praised as representation in the mainstream media for plus size and queer couples. That is not representation for plus size and queer couples in the media. That is checking a box by media, and there are people out there who are trying to make the change we see because no one else is going to. So if you want to do that, you should. And there's so many ways to do that. You can reach out to me and talk to me, and we can see ways we can do it together. But there is amazing. I just found a wonderful call for short stories from a queer science fiction fat positive publication that's coming out, wanting queer fat sci-fi stories and featuring queer fat bear and chub characters. That's what they want, and that's amazing. They didn't see that in the community, they didn't see that in the world. They're making that themselves because no one else is doing that. The book I called before, Diet Riot, these two women, they didn't see this anywhere represented in the horror industry before. They're making that. Sidekick Productions, no one is making the shows that we're making, no one at all. And that's, so we have to do it. And you see all the time, especially you see fat celebrities talking about how no one is casting them or no one wants them in these things, or complaining about movies that portray things in the way that are not going that are not positive. Stop complaining, and we just have to do it ourselves, because no one else is going to do that. No one wants to do that. No one sees any value in it except for ourselves. And until we support those who are making this content, until we do more of it ourselves, no one in the industry is going to see a reason to make this content. So
absolutely. Now listen, Josh, I lied. I have two more questions for you. I do apologize. My first question is this: how do we get the Thicc Radio co-host onto like a guest spot on one of your fabulous shows? I'm not trying
for
to.
God's sake.
I'm just. This is called the business.
What are we going to be, Heckle and Jekyll in the corner?
You never know. We could always find a way to do that. I've been doing more things with Zoom for actors who can't be in the city. For season 5 of Skeleton Crew, we had one of our actors who was in multiple episodes. Greg Gunter. He had to do all of his things through Zoom because we could not have access to him in the city, and so we were able to do it all that way. I have actors. I have an actor who, for Demon Doctor, she did a voiceover role for us. She's based out of Iceland, and she still did she was able to do the voiceover for us. There's always ways to get people who want to be involved into our shows, so never fear. There's always ways to make that happen. So.
Fabulous. I did joke with Tim, I'd love it if we just like appeared in the back corner of a shot. You know, like how you have like celebs who like do that thing where it's like, oh my god, it's James Marsden, and like James Marsden's whole role is to portray like as if James Marsden was the biggest cunt in the universe. I think that would be kind of camp if it turned out that like, oh my god, it's the co-host of Thicc Radio, and then all we're talking about is like the need to like diet and lose weight, and we're like, we have to hold up this veneer like we love fat, and we're just like cramming food into our mouths the whole time while we wear like gym clothes. I don't know. Whatever. We'll talk. You know, the burgeoning stars on the rise. You know, we'll collaborate.
Right.
That's what the kids say, right? It's a collaboration. We'll do
collab. Yes.
We'll hashtag collab. Thank you.
Yes. Hashtag collab. We'll do the TikToks together or something like that. So
exactly. Everyone will gag the children, honey. We'll be like, oh my god. But aside from that, where can listeners find you online?
So you can find me on Instagram at Sidekick Productions. You can find me on Twitter at Sidekick Prod, and you can find me on TikTok at Sidekick Productions. And then, most importantly, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Sidekick Productions, and our Patreon, patreon.com/Sidekick Productions. If you go to the Patreon and you join it, you get the Discord where you can join and talk to me regularly. So,
well, there you go. Josh, it's been amazing having you. Thank you so much for being here today. But that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BeefyFrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and BeefyFrat at ThiccyMouse. You can also look us up on Instagram and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can reach us at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/Thicc Radio/Thicc Oh, God. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by stannnum and Thicc.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.